So the final speaker for this panel is Julien Clausse, who's head of O21 Exploration Engineering at BNP Paribas. Welcome to the discussion.
Good morning. Thanks. So for what it's worth, I had a unit at BNP Paribas CIB managing strategy-driven concrete exploration. Got a team of technologists, entrepreneurs, and we are strongly user-centered in what we do. So I've built new products and departments in many large corporations, in several industries, so automotive, IoT, travel tech, and now finance. I've got a slide deck, so I don't know if you can. Great. So if you can move to the next slide, please. So I think we're all aware of these two modes in which a business can operate. Exploration is the search of a new business, usually a word in which startups evolves. Exploitation is all about executing and optimizing a scaled business, usually where large corporations are. Both are important, and usually if you're a large corporation, you're heavily focusing on exploitation, so like banks, and still you make investments in exploration to prepare the future. Unfortunately, these two modes are very different. You need different types of people, different processes, and different KPIs. And exploration are actually very structured. It's data-driven, of course, but it forces you to be very clear upfront on why you do what you do and what you're going to measure. And at the core, they're aiming at managing uncertainty and extract value from this uncertainty, turning questions into opportunities. So if you go to the next slide. And talking about uncertainty, well, we've seen it become more and more important. We talked about VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, even more today. And in my humble opinion, it's a key competitive advantage these days to be able to respond to uncertainty. And we've seen many large and very successful corporations failing to respond despite tons of cash, very bright people, and market dominance. If you go on the next slide. So as a boxer said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And the idea here is to train yourself. If you haven't trained yourself in managing uncertainty many times before, it's very likely you'll fail the first time you face it. And in that way, the current crisis is very helpful for that, because it forced companies to train if they haven't done it before. This is why I believe it's important, if not essential, that large corporations, including banks, strengthen this ability to respond and their reflexes. It goes through creating new value proposition using methodologies from startups, of course, combined together with the unfair advantage of incumbents' go-to-market channels. Of course, the outcome of creating new products and services is major to sustain your business, but not necessarily as important as the one you get in training the organization to adapt in real time, to measure market signal, to identify opportunities, and be able to execute in the world of uncertainty. Next slide, please. And execution is all. We know that. It's all about execution. Interestingly, what startups do very well is their ability to focus, like a laser. Okay, in the case of startups, being razor sharp is by design, driven by scarcity of resources, and it leads to stronger impact. We find the same kind of ability in some large corporations as well, by the way. It's not only for startups, mostly in digital natives like GAFAs, with the whole organization able to align very quickly and check OKRs if you want, objective key results. That's one of the way to manage that. Some other large corporations have all sorts of legacy processes, organizational, business, tech, etc. And it usually deals with many markets. This legacy is good in a world full of certainty, but diluted light is broad and illuminates many. However, in a world of uncertainty, you burn a lot of energy by being broad and with limited impact. So layered thinking comes with a clear vision, a clear strategy, and a way to have this vision and strategy being understood by all. Everyone knows exactly what to do in this context. If you go to the next slide. And the recent crisis triggered by COVID-19 showed us many things. The main one, I think, is pretty much everywhere in the world. Human lives were considered more important than the economy, and this is a very good message in my opinion. There are other things that have impacted the business, and I just list 4 here, but I'm sure there are many more. And I've heard it a lot, even in the previous talk. First, the crisis clearly showed interdependencies in our economies. Of course, we know about globalization, but suddenly we concretely discovered what it meant. When a country shuts down, it impacts the world, and we lived it. And we realized interdependencies that we didn't identify before. So there's certainly opportunities for the trade finance in this trend, but also financing in general. Second, is self-service has become mandatory. We've heard that a lot as well. People at home still needed to work and needed to access systems and run the operations. Many have found that some systems were not ready. And many had to fix that pretty quickly, and they did it, which is very, very, very good. We're clearly in the digitalization of banks, which was in the roadmaps, but the crisis accelerated this trend and may open up some new distribution opportunities and self-service and personalization. Third, we've seen a shift in value. Suddenly, workers like nurses, doctors, or transporters were highlighted as key to our society. Still, their wages don't reflect this at all, and people noticed it. And new values can create new asset classes. For instance, we hear a lot about energy transition, and I've heard it many times this morning, linked to restarting the economy. What it means to work on this energy transition. So shift in value implies the ability to better deal with what matters and what doesn't. And it's back to the focus concept. And finally, local may now be a viable, if not a desirable option. I hear a lot about investment trends moving to hyper-local. And people realized during the crisis that the field next door was actually producing vegetables they could buy. Distribution got shorter and actually worked during the crisis. Again, new product classes can be created together with some new distribution channels, almost like location-based in a way. Of course, we don't know if all this will persist over time. Still, it was a sort of a wake-up call, and I'm sure that some of new businesses will be built on these trends and new behaviors. And traditional players like banks are also embracing this to serve better the world. And next slide, please. So in times of great uncertainty, the most critical skill is to be able to adapt as conditions change. This is a kind of ambidexterity, focusing on surviving in the current moment while you also build toward thriving in a future that will look different. This is why I find incredible in times of a high uncertainty. Suddenly the organization is fully aligned and operates in new modes, improving its impact. Yes, it's triggered by an external event, but still, resilience and adaptivity is becoming a core business skill. The organizations that will survive will be the ones able to focus, be clear on what they do and why they do it. By embracing uncertainty and new modes of execution, iterative, focused, hypothesis-driven, this is how you really make your organization future-ready, not only in terms of product and services, but in terms of culture and capabilities. COVID-19 crisis has led organizations to do some strong introspection in reassessing who they are and how they operate, with people at the core, opening up some new ways of creating and delivering value. And as a conclusion, eventually, isn't culture defining a company much more than what it offers to the market? And could this cultural shift of being at ease in dealing with uncertainty be the new normal? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julien. Obviously is a good segue into the next session as well, but I think it's good to raise these issues in every session and for every panel, and we will address them.